Today we're making Bánh Chưng. Bánh Chưng and its southern counterpart, Bánh Tét, are absolute must-haves for Tết, Vietnamese/Lunar New Year. I love the origin story of Bánh Chưng. According to legends, around 1600 BC, the Emperor Vô Hùng issued a challenge to his 21 sons. Whoever brought back the most delicious dish for Tết would get the throne. While his brothers searched far and wide for the rarest and most expensive delicacies, Lang Liu, the 18th prince, was the poorest and could not afford to. Instead, he looked at the fields of rice around him and created two cakes, Bánh Dày and Bánh Chưng. Bánh Dày, a smooth white circular cake made from pounded sticky rice, represented the sky. Bánh Chưng, with its filling of pork and mung beans, encased in whole grains of sticky rice, dyed green by the leaves that they're wrapped in, represented the earth along with its flora and fauna. The emperor was impressed by the taste and deep meanings of Lang Liu's creation and granted him the throne. For this recipe, you'll need la zong or la chuối banana leaves, a square mold if you're using banana leaves, some twine, mung beans, sticky rice, pork belly, shallot, salt, bouillon powder, ground black pepper, and fish sauce. Traditionally, Bánh Chưng is made with whole zong leaves. The stem allows you to create the square shape without using a mold. We got these frozen from our local Asian grocery store. Alternatively, you can also use banana leaves and a square mold. You can buy these wooden molds online or make one out of cardboard. In this video, I'll show you how to wrap with both types of leaves. We started yesterday by rinsing and soaking the sticky rice and marinating the pork overnight, and this morning we started soaking the mung beans. Let's go back to last night and I'll show you the steps. Hey, you've traveled back in time to the previous night. Before going to bed, I'm just going to prep the rice and pork to get them ready for tomorrow. For the rice, we're first going to rinse well. You want to rinse the rice before soaking because afterwards the grains would be too fragile and would break. I put the rice in a bowl, filled it with water, and will wash it thoroughly. As you can see, this rice is very starchy. It's not enough just to rinse it under running water. I'm using the squeezing motion to rub the grains against one another to extract the excess starch. Now we'll pour out this water and repeat this 3 times. After the 3rd wash, we'll fill the bowl with enough water to cover the surface of the rice, plus a few centimeters. Now this will just soak until tomorrow morning. For the pork belly, I like to use pieces with a ratio of about 60-40 meat to fat. You don't want meat that is too lean because that will be tough and won't taste good, but you also don't want pieces that are too fatty because some of the fat will melt off during the cooking and leave you with basically nothing in the center. We want equal pieces of about 100 grams, one for each Bánh Chưng. Now we'll slice up the shallot and marinate the pork. Peel, then thinly slice up your shallot. Add pork belly to a bowl along with the sliced shallot. Fish sauce. Bouillon. And ground black pepper. Mix well to ensure that all the pieces are coated in the marinade. And that's it for tonight. The rice can stay on the counter to soak, and the meat will go in the fridge to marinate overnight. Now let's get some rest, because we've got an eventful day ahead of us tomorrow. I'll see you in the morning. Good morning, welcome back to present time. The first thing we're going to do this morning is rinse and soak our mung beans while we prepare the rest of the ingredients.
We're going to wash the mung beans just like we did with the rice twice. Then we'll add enough water to cover the surface of the beans plus a few centimeters.
Now we'll let this soak for about 2 hours. If your leaves are frozen, you'll also want to leave them on the counter or soak in some water so that they can come to room temperature. First, we'll rinse the mung beans a couple times and then drain. Now that this is strained, I'm going to add a teaspoon of salt. Mix it up. Add it to our steamer.
We'll spread the beans out in an even layer.
Now we'll add water to the bottom pot and steam for 20 minutes starting from when the water is boiling. The mung beans are steaming. Next, let's prep the rice. You can see that the rice has expanded a lot since last night. Now we'll strain the rice. Be very gentle because the grains are fragile after soaking. Now we'll add a tablespoon of salt and mix it in very gently. Where's my tablespoon?
This step of seasoning the rice seems minor, but is very important. If you don't season your rice, your bánh chưng will taste very bland.
This next step is optional, but I recommend it. We're going to briefly cook the meat to allow it to absorb more of the seasoning.
Heat a pan on medium, add the oil, then add the pork pieces in a single layer along with any marinating liquid or pieces of shallot. Turn the heat down to medium-low, add a splash of water, and let cook for 2 to 3 minutes on each side. Once done, remove from heat and set aside.
The mung beans are done steaming, so now we're going to mash them.
My favorite tool for this is a pestle, but you can use whatever works for you. You want to mash until you can no longer see individual beans. Now we'll let this sit for a little bit to cool down.
Next, we'll wash and dry our leaves.
After washing the leaves, shake off water and wipe dry with a clean towel.
You can definitely eyeball your bánh chưng, but if you want really even cakes, I would recommend measuring and dividing up your rice and mung beans. With the mung beans, what we normally do is shape them into balls.
Use your hands or a cheesecloth and shape each portion into a tight ball. Each ball is for one bánh chưng. This will make it much easier than dealing with loose mashed mung beans when we assemble the bánh chưng.
We're going to cut our twine into pieces of about 50 centimeters long.
You will need to tie each bánh chưng 4 times. If your twine is thick, you only need 4 pieces per cake. If it's thinner like ours, I recommend doubling the amount and using 2 strands together as one to make them stronger. Fold the leaf along the midrib, with the midrib sitting on one side of the fold. The side with the midrib is the outside. The side without the midrib is the inside. Flip the leaf if needed so that the inside is facing you, then fold the leaf in half, perpendicular to the midrib along the widest part of the leaf. Measure 11 centimeters along the midrib, outwards from the corner fold you just made. Cut the leaf at this 11 centimeters mark, perpendicular to the midrib and parallel to the fold. This is the first of your 2 inside pieces. We're now repeating the same steps to create your second inside piece. Next, we'll repeat these steps again, except that this time we will measure and cut 11.5 centimeters instead. These will be your outside pieces. You should now have 4 pieces, 2 smaller inside pieces, and 2 larger outside pieces. Starting with one of your outside pieces, unfold, then take the bottom center fold, which is perpendicular to the midrib, and fold it along one half of the midrib. The 2 halves of the midrib will now be at 90 degrees. The piece of leaf should look like one corner of a box and should be freestanding. Repeat with your second outside piece. Place one piece on top of the other with the corners facing one another. Your box should now have 2 closed corners and 2 open corners. Next, we'll repeat the folding process with our first inside piece. Then place it into the box, with its corner aligning with one of the open corners of the box. Repeat the fold with your second inside piece. Place it into the box with its corner aligning with the remaining open corner of the box. You should now have a box with 4 closed corners. Add a little less than half of one of the rice portions to your leaf box and spread it out evenly. Break a mung bean ball in half. Set one half aside. Flatten the other half in the center on top of the rice layer, leaving at least 1 centimeter of space on each side where you can see the rice. This ensures the mung bean filling will be fully encased and does not peek out through the rice.
Cute.
Add the pork belly in the center on top of the mung bean layer. Our pieces ended up being just a bit too thick, so we cut each piece in half and they fit perfectly. The pork should also not exceed the rice border that we left earlier. Flatten the remaining half of the mung bean ball into a rough disc in your hands and press it on top of the pork. Add the rest of the rice, starting by filling the empty sides around the mung bean and pork, then on top to cover everything. Gently adjust and shape the sides of the cake with your hands, then spread the rice out to create a flat, even layer on top. Slide a piece of twine, or two if you're doubling up like we are, underneath the box. It should sit a third of the way in from one side. Add a piece of leaf on top of the rice. This is optional but helps secure your bánh chưng even more. Fold in the left and right sides towards the center, one side on top of the other. The top and bottom sides should now look like triangles. Fold those triangles tightly towards the center. You may need to adjust a few times to ensure that everything lays flat. Holding the top down, bring both ends of the twine up towards you and tie a knot, just tight enough to prevent the top from opening up, but not digging into the sides. The cake will expand during cooking, so if the twines are tied too tight, the sides will bulge out or even break. Slide another twine under the cake, a third of the way in from the other side, and tie a knot. Tie 2 more twines perpendicular to the first 2 pieces, and your bánh chưng is complete. Measure the inside width of your bánh chưng mold. Ours is 11 centimeters. If your banana leaves still have some of the midribs, trim them off. Measure, then cut or tear banana leaves along the venation lines into strips of the same width as the inside of your bánh chưng mold. The middle of each strip being the exact measurement is the most important part. The two ends being slightly off does not matter as much. Repeat until you have enough strips. You will need 6 per bánh chưng. To assemble, slide a strip of leaf into the mold along one wall, greener side facing towards the center of the mold. Bring the two ends of the strip together with one side above and one side below the wall of the mold. Pull the two ends tightly away from the mold and crease the leaf on the wall of the mold. Repeat for the other 3 walls. Place the 5th strip of leaf into the center, greener side facing up, and crease at the bottom to create a flat bottom and 2 walls for the box. Place the final strip of leaf into the center, greener side facing up, perpendicular to the previous strip to create 2 more walls for the box. Cut or tear a small strip of leaf about 5 centimeters by 7 centimeters. Fold it in half, then reopen and slot it into one of the corners between the 2 layers of leaf. Repeat for the other 3 corners. Add a little less than half of one of the rice portions to your leaf box and spread it out evenly. Break a mung bean ball in half. Set one half aside. Flatten the other half in the center on top of the rice layer, leaving at least 1 centimeter of space on each side where you can see the rice. This ensures the mung bean filling will be fully encased and does not peek out through the rice. Add the pork belly in the center on top of the mung bean layer. Our pieces ended up being just a bit too thick, so we cut each piece in half and they fit perfectly. The pork should also not exceed the rice border that we left earlier. Here I'm adding a little bit of rice on each side to build up that border a little bit. Flatten the remaining half of the mung bean ball into a rough disc in your hands and press it on top of the pork. Add the rest of the rice on top to cover everything. And spread the rice out to create a flat, even layer on top. If the walls of the leaf box are not tall enough to fully cover the rice, add 1 or 2 pieces of leaves before folding the walls down. Starting with the outer flap that is facing you, fold the left side inwards at 45 degrees towards the top of the cake to create a right angle triangle with the 90-degree corner on the right. Pull it forward and down tightly so it is sitting flat on top of the cake. Turn the entire cake 90 degrees clockwise and repeat with the flap that is now facing you, while holding on to the first triangle from the previous step so that it does not become undone. Repeat the turning and folding for the remaining 2 flaps. If there is extra leaf sticking out on the right, trim it off to get a clean triangle before folding. Ensuring that all 4 triangles are sitting tight and flat, tuck the loose top corner of the triangle that is on top underneath the one right below it. You should now have an X pattern. Carefully flip the entire cake upside down. Repeat the process for the 4 flaps on this side. Slide a piece of twine, or 2 if you're doubling up, underneath the cake. Gently pull the mold off the cake. Your twine should be sitting 1/3 of the way in from one side. Tie a knot just tight enough to prevent the top from opening up, but not digging into the sides. The cake will expand during cooking, so if the twines are tied too tight, the sides will bulge out or even break. Slide another piece of twine underneath the cake from the opposite side, 1/3 of the way in from that side, and tie a knot. Tie 2 more twines perpendicular to the first 2 pieces, and your Bánh Chưng is complete. Here are the finished products. The ones on the right are made with lá dong, and the ones on the left are made with lá chuối, banana leaves.
Now we're ready to cook. We're going to line the pot with extra leaves. This prevents the cakes from coming into direct contact with the bottom of the pot. Now we'll place the cakes in a single layer. If possible, we want the cakes to perfectly fit into the bottom of the pot like this. This prevents them from moving around and cooking unevenly. Now we'll fill this up with water and get it on the stove.
Pour in enough room temperature water to fully submerge the cakes, plus at least 4 to 5 centimeters of water above them.
Now we'll get this on the stove and bring it to boil on medium-high.
Once the water is boiling vigorously, reduce heat to medium or whichever temperature on your stove that will maintain a low rolling boil. Cook for 7 to 12 hours. This depends on the size of your pot, the size of your bánh chưng, the strength of your stove, and how many bánh chưng you're cooking. For 4 bánh chưng, we cooked for about 7.5 hours. Check on the pot at least once an hour. If the water level gets close to the top of the cakes, boil some water in a kettle or small pot and pour it in. Do not pour in cold water. We do not want the temperature of the water in the pot to drop. If your cakes are floating up or moving around too much, place a sturdy heat-proof plate on top to submerge them. When the bánh chưng are done cooking, carefully remove them from the pot and place the cakes on a flat tray or cutting board. Place another tray or cutting board on top of them, followed by some heavy objects. I used our heavyweight Dutch oven. Leave them pressed for 5 to 8 hours. This squeezes out any excess water from the cooking process, preventing the rice from becoming mushy and helping the cake stay fresh longer.
It's the next morning and our bánh chưng are ready. All that's left to do is to cut one open and taste.
We'll start with one of our bánh chưng made with lá dong. Start by cutting the twine and unwrapping the top and sides of the bánh chưng, leaving it sitting on the bottom layer of leaves. Because the rice is very sticky, cutting the cake with strings is much better than a knife. I recommend clean dental floss. You can see that the rice has taken on a nice light green color from the leaves. This bánh chưng has a more organic and rustic shape because we didn't use a mold. Place a piece of dental floss on the cake diagonally from one opposite corner to another. Tie a knot on one end of the floss to mark that this is the first string. Place another piece of floss perpendicular to the first to form an X. Place a third piece of floss horizontally running through the center of the cake. Tie a knot on one end of the floss to mark that this is the third string. Place the final piece of floss vertically running through the center of the cake. Place a plate upside down on top of the cake and flip. Remove the leaves that are now on top. With lá dong, especially frozen ones, you might end up with some bits of leaves stuck to the rice. Just peel them off. Starting with the first diagonal floss that was knotted, pick up the two ends of the floss, pull them towards, and then pass each other. Repeat for the second diagonal floss. Repeat with the horizontal floss that was knotted, followed by the final vertical floss. You now have 8 equal slices. Now we'll unwrap this bánh chưng made with banana leaves. We'll cut the twine and open up the leaves. As you can see, this one is much more square than the one made with lá dong since we used a mold. The color is a darker green that is more tinted yellow. You might also end up with some lines from the veins of the leaves. We're going to cut this the same way. Place a piece of dental floss on the cake diagonally from one opposite corner to another. Tie a knot on one end of the floss to mark that this is the first string. Place another piece of floss perpendicular to the first to form an X. Do not tie a knot in this piece. Here you can see that I'm tying a knot in the first floss because I forgot before. Place a third piece of floss horizontally running through the center of the cake. It should cross the center of the X. Tie a knot on one end of the floss to mark that this is the third string. Place the final piece of floss vertically running through the center of the cake. It should cross the other three strings at the center. Do not tie a knot in this piece. Place a plate upside down on top of the cake and flip. Remove the leaves that are now on top. Starting with the first diagonal floss that was knotted, pick up the two ends of the floss, pull them towards, and then pass each other. Repeat for the second diagonal floss. Repeat with the horizontal floss that was knotted, followed by the final vertical floss. You now have 8 equal slices. If you ask different Vietnamese people, they'll probably swear by different dipping sauces for bánh chưng. My favorite is simple, a good fish sauce and some ground black pepper. I recommend serving your bánh chưng with dưa muối, pickled mustard greens, and Vietnamese cold cuts like giò lụa.
So good. You can't beat fresh bánh chưng. The rice is so tender.
I hope you'll try your hand at making bánh chưng. Make sure you subscribe to our channel for more Vietnamese and French recipes.